Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. On Capitol Hill, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has scheduled a vote on the Republican health care plan today after multiple previous efforts to put the Republican legislation to a vote failed amidst dissent within Republicans' own party. Arizona Republican Senator John McCain is set to return to Washington, D.C. for the vote only a week after being diagnosed with an aggressive form of brain cancer. The Senate will technically be voting to proceed with a version of the Republican health care bill passed narrowly by the House, and then the Senate floor will open to debate and amendments on the legislation. It's not clear if Republicans even have enough votes to proceed to a debate. If they do, they could vote on anything from the House bill, which would cause 23 million people to lose their health insurance over the next decade, to plan to repeal the Affordable Care Act without replacement legislation, which could lead to 32 million people losing insurance over the next decade. Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor, Jared Kushner, is returning to Capitol Hill today for a second day of testimony in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee amidst the ongoing investigation into the Trump campaign's ties to Russia. On Monday, Kushner testified for 2 hours during a closed-door session. He then spoke to reporters outside the White House.
Let me be very clear. I did not collude with Russia, nor do I know of anyone else in the campaign who did so. I had no improper contacts. I have not relied on Russian funds for my businesses. And I have been fully transparent in providing all requested information. Donald Trump had a better message and ran a smarter campaign, and that is why he won.
After Kushner left the Senate Intelligence Committee hearing, he was confronted by a protester, Ryan Clayton, of the group Americans Take Action.
Sign my Russian flag, please, sign my Russian flag. I'm here today because that man right there conspired with the Russians to steal an American election. That should be unacceptable. If we don't want billionaires buying our elections, why are we letting foreign governments and foreign agents and the people who conspire with them stand in the White House next to the president? It's despicable. We must do something about this. Impeach this president. He must resign immediately.
Trump's oldest son, Donald Trump Jr., and Trump's former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, are slated to testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee tomorrow during a closed-door session in which they will reportedly not be under oath. President Trump is intensifying his attacks against Attorney General Jeff Sessions over the ongoing investigations into the Trump campaign's ties to Russia. On Monday night, Trump tweeted, quote, "So why aren't the committees and investigators, and of course our beleaguered AG, looking into crooked Hillary's crimes and Russia relations," unquote. Then, during a Twitter rant this morning, President Trump lashed out at both Sessions and acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe, tweeting, quote, "Attorney General Jeff Sessions has taken a very weak position on Hillary Clinton crimes, where are emails and DNC server and intel leakers," unquote. He also tweeted, quote, "Problem is that the acting head of the FBI and the person in charge of the Hillary investigation, Andrew McCabe, got $700,000 from H for wife," unquote. This comes after Trump said last week he never would have nominated Jeff Sessions to be Attorney General if he had known Sessions was going to recuse himself from a Justice Department investigation into Trump campaign ties to Russia. The Washington Post is reporting Trump and his advisors are considering replacing Sessions, and that Texas Senator Ted Cruz and former New York Mayor Rudolph Giuliani are among the candidates being considered as Sessions' replacement. In Iowa, 2 Catholic workers said Monday they had carried out multiple acts of sabotage aimed at stopping the construction of the $3.8 billion Dakota Access Pipeline, which stretches from North Dakota through South Dakota, Iowa, and into Illinois. Jessica Resnicek and Ruby Montoya said that on Election Day last year, the 2 set fire to 5 pieces of heavy machinery being used to construct the pipeline. The 2 then taught themselves how to destroy empty pipeline valves and moved up and down the pipeline's length, destroying the valves and delaying construction for weeks. The 2 said they're claiming responsibility for the sabotage in order to inspire more to take action. This is Catholic worker Jessica Resnicek.
We are speaking publicly to empower others to act boldly, with purity of heart, to dismantle the infrastructures which deny us our rights to water, land, and liberty. mistaken. We acted from our hearts and never threatened human life nor personal property. What we did do was fight a private corporation that has run rampantly across our country, seizing land and polluting our nation's water supply.
And that was Catholic worker Ruby Montoya. The two were speaking in front of the Iowa Utilities Board office. After they delivered their statement, the two used a hammer and crowbar to try to remove the letters of the Iowa Utilities Board sign in protest of the board's decision on Friday to reject a lawsuit by environmental groups seeking to have the pipeline state permit revoked, which would have forced the pipeline to shut down. The two women were arrested Monday for damaging the sign and are being held on a $1,000 bond. Oil is now flowing through the Dakota Access Pipeline after the project was green-lighted by President Trump, despite months of massive nationwide resistance against the pipeline led by the Standing Rock Sioux of North Dakota. Meanwhile, in California, two protesters were arrested Monday as a dozen people blockaded the gates of the Kinder Morgan oil terminal in Richmond Monday morning to protest the company's plans to expand the Trans Mountain tar sands pipeline in Canada. Activists locked themselves to oil barrels and a 12-foot-long mock oil pipeline that read, "No consent, no pipeline." Kinder Morgan's proposed Trans Mountain pipeline expansion is facing widespread resistance from First Nations in Canada. In San Antonio, Texas, truck driver James Matthew Bradley, Jr. appeared in court and was charged with transporting undocumented immigrants for the purpose of private financial gain after dozens of undocumented immigrants were discovered packed into the back of a sweltering tractor-trailer he'd been driving. When the group of immigrants were discovered in a Walmart parking lot in San Antonio, 8 men were already dead in the truck. 2 more men died later. 29 remain hospitalized. Authorities say they're investigating it as a human trafficking case. Survivors say as many as 200 people were sandwiched into the back of the truck at times during the deadly journey, and that the truck's cooling system was broken. As the temperature soared in the back of the truck, survivors say they banged on the walls to try to get the driver's attention, but the truck did not stop. Migrants began to pass out, then die from asphyxiation and heat exposure, the youngest victims just 15 years old. The truck driver claims he was unaware that people were packed into the back of his tractor-trailer until he parked outside the Walmart to use the bathroom and heard loud banging noises. If convicted, Bradley could face the death penalty or life in prison. We'll go to San Antonio for more on the story after headlines with Eddie Canales, director of the South Texas Human Rights Center, and Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Sonia Nazario. In Pakistan, at least 26 people were killed in a suicide bomb attack at a vegetable market in Lahore Monday. The attack, claimed by the Taliban, was targeting police officers and killed at least 9 officers. Israel is removing metal detectors from the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem after massive protests by Palestinians who say the security measures were part of an effort by Israelis to seize control of the holy site. The move comes after the UN Security Council held an emergency meeting over the mounting protests and violence. At least 7 people, 4 Palestinians and 3 Israelis, have been killed since Friday. This is UN Middle East envoy Mikhail Mladenov.
I call on the parties to refrain from provocative actions, show restraint, and work towards finding a solution. It is extremely important that a solution to the current crisis be found by Friday this week. I think the dangers on the ground will escalate if we go through another cycle of Friday prayer without a resolution to this current crisis.
Israel says it will replace the metal detectors with another form of security measures. According to the website Electronic Intifada, some right-wing Israeli extremists have been calling for the expulsion of Muslims from the Al-Aqsa Mosque entirely. The group, known as the Temple Movement, has issued a statement saying, quote, "We must liberate the Temple Mount from the murderous Islam and return it to the people of Israel," unquote. Meanwhile, a rabbi and 4 other members of an interfaith delegation to Israel and Palestine were blocked from boarding the plane to Israel in what appears to be Israel enforcing its travel ban against people who support the Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions, or BDS movement, an international campaign to pressure Israel to comply with international law and respect Palestinian rights. Rabbi Alyssa Wise, deputy director of Jewish Voice for Peace, said, quote, "We were told at check-in that the airline has a letter from the Israeli government saying we are not allowed to fly to Israel," unquote. Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte vowed to continue his bloody drug war during a State of the Nation address Monday.
The fight will be unremitting as it will be unrelenting. Despite international and local pressures, the fight will not stop until those who deal in it understand that they have to cease, they have to stop, because the alternative are either jail or hell.
Filipino security forces and vigilantes have killed more than 7,000 suspected drug users and dealers since Duterte launched his so-called war on drugs a year ago. During his State of the Nation, Duterte also attacked multiple Filipino media outlets, including the popular Filipino-owned website Rappler, which Duterte falsely accused of being American-owned. On Sunday, the Philippines Congress also granted Duterte's request to extend martial law in the southern region of Mindanao until the end of the year. President Trump has invited Duterte to the White House. Back in the United States in Michigan, federal judge Mark Goldsmith has halted the deportation of more than 1,400 Iraqis, ruling the immigrants could face torture or death if returned to Iraq. The ruling gives the immigrants more time to try to convince courts to overturn their deportation orders. The Immigrations and Customs Enforcement Agency, known as ICE, has rounded up hundreds of Iraqi immigrants in Michigan in recent months after U.S. and Iraq reached a new agreement that allows the U.S. to deport Iraqis even if they don't have valid Iraqi travel documents. In Mississippi, a former Navy sailor has been sentenced to 40 years in prison for murdering 25-year-old African-American transgender woman Dee Wiggum in a hotel room in 2016 after he learned she was transgender. The autopsy shows Dwanya Hickerson slashed Wiggum's throat and stabbed her more than 100 times. Hickerson originally faced the possibility of life in prison or even the death penalty, but he received a plea deal, which Wiggum's mother says is a slap in the face. Before her murder, Dee Wiggum had just begun her medical career working as a nurse. And in Baltimore, Maryland, a group of high school students are tackling the drug overdose epidemic by building a cell phone app that alerts people when a toxic batch of heroin is being distributed in their area. The students, who are mostly African-American, helped design and build Bad Batch Alert, which sends text messages to alert Baltimore residents when people in their area are overdosing at a higher rate, likely from a tainted batch of the drug. The app also allows users to text for help, allowing drug users an alternative to calling 911 in the event of an overdose. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.